Hey everyone, Duke Nukem 3D here, pretty much over my cold and fever, and today I have for you what is probably one of the strangest respiratory apparatus that I've ever owned in my collection. And today I have for you my AMBU Resuscitation device, individual chemical protective. I don't know the full name, but anyways, AMBU Mark III Manual Resuscitator. Now this particular one was devised as a means of providing CPR or manual resuscitation to patients in an NBC environment. I do not know when these were introduced, and as far as I know, these are still current issue with the United States, Germany, and Canada. There were two other AMBU Mark series, the Mark I and Mark II, and the Mark IV, from what I've witnessed, is actually not non-military. So the AMBU Mark III here is current issue, and it is certainly kind of a strange device and a novel concept. Well, not really a novel concept, but just one that hasn't really been touched upon much. The only other two accounts of a resuscitation device for use in chemical environments would be the M28 mask-to-mouth resuscitator, which was essentially an M9A1 face piece that had a long hose going to an oronasal mask and a valve system. It was basically just you breathe out of the mask and into another smaller mask for the patient. I'm not really good at explaining this. You'd probably have to go search it yourself. Not that you can really find a whole lot of photos and info on that one. And then, of course, the one you're probably thinking of, the M17A1's M1 resuscitation feature, which was a mouthpiece and hose assembly which clipped onto the outlet valve, and then there was an inner resuscitation bit that you operated with the drinking lever, and you blew into and resuscitated the patient by that way. But the reason that was ditched, all these past resuscitation features integrated into gas masks, is one thing, it probably cost a whole lot more to make them as opposed to just having a separate resuscitation device and, you know, instead of making one compatible with a gas mask. Another thing is that resuscitation devices for NBC environments, they expose the patient to chemical agents because it required you to take their mask off. So I'm not sure what the concept would be for this one, since it really doesn't offer that much protection when you compare it to previous NBC resuscitation devices of the day. But it's certainly, holding its ground because it's still in use today, and I've not heard of any reports of well, not that I could find really any information on this thing in general, but anyways, before I ramble on, let's get into the details of this thing. Now, before I go on to the actual assembly itself, let's check out the contents of this large carrying case. It's a very heavy-duty plastic box. It's kind of nice, actually. What it comes with, it'll come packaged in this olive drab foil bag, which I'm keeping because it has a lot of nice instruction images on it, if the camera will pick those up. I really need to get a new camera sometime. I apologize if you can't see these. Just gives you a few basic rundowns. There are no dates or any indication of when this was manufactured, unfortunately, such as life with these things. This thing right here is probably the most laughable part of this kit. I'm not going to unfold this, but this is a giant sheet of plastic with a hole in the center that's meant to go in between this valve here and the actual mask itself as sort of a plastic chemical curtain that goes over the patient's face. And I guess that was their whole solution to the whole, it exposes the patients to chemical agents while you're using the damn thing. But anyways, yeah, it comes with a giant sheet of plastic for you to use as a chemical protective poncho. Well, not really poncho, but you know what I mean. Anyways, mine, interesting, came with a M95 cartridge like you see with the Scott M95 masks. This is interesting because this is a US military issued one, and all the other ones that I've seen typically come with a C2A1 canister like I currently have on it. And then in this bag here, which is actually the bag the harness came in, you have a whole bunch of documentation on basically, this particular document right here outlines decontamination procedures for this device, AMBU resuscitation device, individual chemical, RDIC, and just, a very quick rundown of how to decon it, people to contact, the materials that certain parts are made out of, You have two other manuals. You have one manual for the mask itself, which is actually the beefiest of all manuals because it's been translated into several different languages. Then you have a manual for the actual resuscitator itself. It's not translated into any languages, so it's relatively thin. There are no images in it except for at the front where you have this fold out showing all of the images you need in the manual, but I guess they were kind of too lazy to organize it, so they just use like reference numbers so you can like flip back to this fold out and it's like, oh, this is what you do, just in case you needed a visual. But anyways, that's kind of interesting. I don't see too many technical manuals do that where it's just you have all the images at the front and then it kind of references back to that. And this I haven't really looked through yet, so I assume this is instructions for the harness, because this is what came packaged with the harness. I haven't read through it yet, but it also appears to be translated into several languages. And just a quick flip through of the face mask booklet. As you can see, this one does have the images integrated with the text. It's actually a very short manual if you just read through one section of it. It's just they translate it into several different languages that it really makes the manual a whole lot thicker. Anyways, without further ado, let's get on to the actual device itself, because this is one particularly interesting apparatus. So the way it operates is you squeeze this bladder here. It basically pumps air into the mask, and the bag is self-inflating, so when you let go, it automatically inflates and sucks air through the filter, sort of like an automatic powered air purifying respirator, except it's hand-powered. There is one particular thing I am actually missing from this kit, and that is the hose clamps. The hose clamps are actually standard nylon ratchet type hose clamps, which I should be buying a couple here soon. And because they come in a 10-pack, that's kind of convenient because they look really handy, and I might use them on other things as well. So yeah, a bit unfortunate that mine didn't come with the hose clamps for securing the EPDM hose onto the fittings, but whatever. It's still displayable and it still works until that time. So back onto the AMBU bag, which is basically where all the attention should be centered for now. So as you can see, I have a C2A1 canister screwed onto here, and it does not actually have 40mm threads by default. This is actually an adapter that you stick onto here. Also notice that this EPDM strap is here. While it seems overcomplicated, its literal only purpose is just to hang the AMBU bag from somewhere for easy access. It's kind of redundant for what it needs to be. But anyways, this 40mm thread assembly also has this weird nipple on it, and this is actually a barb for attaching an oxygen line to give a small supply of oxygen while you're resuscitating. I haven't taken the plastic sheath off of this barb because I don't need it, even though the manual describes that there is a valve inside there that would prevent any air from entering while a hose is not attached. I'd rather just keep that plastic sheath on there because I don't need it. As you can see, the adapter is pressure fit. A lot of the fittings on this are pressure fit and are not actually threaded, which is a bit odd. As you can see inside there's the inlet valve, and there's another oxygen barb in case you're not using this device in a chemical environment. And up here you have this rubberized plastic ring, which basically holds the whole assembly together, and also is an attachment point for any of the fittings, like this hose fitting that I currently have on there. It's kind of difficult to pull them off of this ring, so I'm not going to. But you could also attach the patient valve directly to this thing. And the interesting thing about this device is that it's actually two bags in one. There is a hard or stiff EPDM inner bag, which is the self-inflating portion, and then this butyl is the outer bag. And I know what you're thinking, or know what some of you may be thinking. This is not a second skin, like I originally thought, because I have seen examples of these where the inner bag is made out of silicone. No, this is actually meant so that if there's a lot of back pressure in the lungs, the outer bag will inflate, as you see here, so that it's not too forceful of a pressure or something like that. I don't know exactly the reason, but it was something along those lines. And you can disassemble it by unscrewing this threaded ring here and then popping this whole assembly out, which I'm not going to do on camera because it takes not that much time, but I'd rather not go through that process. So let's get on to the mask and patient valve assembly. So here you see the other end of the butyl hose. The hose I'm kind of not impressed with. It's actually, no, this is not a butyl hose. Every site keeps calling this butyl, but it's actually EPDM. It's a very stiff hose, and as you can see, it has a lot of permanent set to it from when it was in the bag. I'm not a fan of this hose, but it still looks nice at least. I mean, aside from the permanent set. And then you have more pressure fit connections. Most of the connections are 22 millimeter, I believe. That's what they describe it as, but I think there's other sizes as well. I'm not entirely sure. The harness is a bit weird because it's a 4-point. I don't think I have mine on centered correctly, but whatever. So yeah, it's literally just a bunch of metal prongs that these little holes loop through. And it doesn't like to stay on very well either. They tend to like to slip off if there's a bit of slack to the harness. So taking that off the head, and I probably won't put it on for the rest of the video. So I'll move the head out of the way. The oronasal mask is pretty interesting because it's literally a plastic mask, but it has an inflated rubberized cushion that is held in place with 6 studs along the edge of the plastic mask. And here you can see the patient valve, which is interesting. And again, 22 millimeter connections. It's just pressure fit. I'll set the mask aside for now and get back to that. The patient valve is interesting because of the inlet valve. Here, I'll unscrew this. It's a bit stiff, but I can do it. So this is the most interesting part right here. Below here is the inlet valve, but this thing right here, I don't know what to call it. I sometimes call it a mushroom valve or a cushion valve. I'll need to look through the manual to see if there's actual designation for this thing. But what this does is when you breathe in, this inflates and covers up this port right here so that no air can escape through the outlet valve. It's kind of ingenious if you think about it. I'm going to attach the hose to this part right here and just show you it inflating just so you can see what I'm talking about here. So look closely at this portion right here and watch it inflate. And keep in mind, no air is going through this. Its only purpose is to inflate just to seal off the outlet valve itself. And once you exhale, the suction from the bag reinflating will hold that mushroom valve or cushion valve shut and allow any exhaled air to pass out through the outlet valve, which is not really all that protected. But then again, most of this design doesn't really seem like it was meant for field combat. It's really just, you know, you're in a aid station or a APC or something like that, and you just need to administer CPR to a patient with, I guess, not under heavy concentrations of chemical agents constantly. I'd assume you'd be in some sort of shelter or semi-protected position, like an armored personnel carrier, as mentioned before. But then again, I don't know. I don't know when or how, or just the general procedures for using this thing, and if they're ever even used. It's such a weird item. I like it, but it's just so hard to find actual info on these being used militarily. I'll probably need to research more into it when I can. I haven't really looked much into them, but anyhow, yeah, back onto the mask itself. As you can see, there's this plastic orange plug which you can undo to inflate the skirt of the mask, although it's a bit difficult because there's no way to pinch off this area. I guess you can just pinch it off right here. I haven't tried that, but it's a bit difficult to inflate because a decent amount of air you breathe into this thing will deflate out of it almost instantly. So it's kind of pointless. But even if it's not like fully inflated, it still holds its shape very well. You got an AMBU marking right here. This mask is a size 5. I believe they go from size 0 to 6. I could be wrong. And then this is the only product that contains natural latex rubber, according to this stamp right here. Everything else is either EPDM or butyl, with the exception of the valves, which are silicone. So that's pretty much it. That has been my AMBU Mark III military resuscitator. So I hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned a thing or two. And if you have any information, comments, questions, concerns, as usual, drop them below in the comments and I'll get to them when I can. I'll try to get some more videos out soon. I really don't have too much else that I'm planning to get all that soon. So anyways, before I ramble on, I'm Duke Nougat 3D. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all later.